Okay, good afternoon. It is Wednesday at the top of some hour, and that must mean it's time for Two on One, the internet's top rated talk show with two disciples theologians interviewing another theologian about the subject of his or her or their choice, done in a Zoom format. It's great to be here. I am one of your co hosts, the Reverend Arthur Stewart.
And I'm the Reverend Stephanie Kendall. And one day you'll get to stop after the internet's best podcast or whatever you said and just be like, the end.
I just want to hedge our bets. I just want to make sure, nobody's going to be like, actually, there's a more successful Disciples talk show at the top of the hour. But there's not. Yeah. Don't start a competition, though, because we will crush you.
Ooh.
Yes. Spiff, how are you today?
I am so excited for today's conversation. It blends a good friend of mine who you get to meet, one of my absolute favorite new shows, and soccer, and faith, and all the things that I love, Arthur.
Yeah, it's like Ted Lasso. I've got to say, if they don't make a second season, it is a perfect show. If they do make a second season, they're going to put the work into it to make it as good as the first. But if they decided not to do another season, I would be like, that is okay. Those 10 episodes were a gift.
They're so good. They are so good. I'm so excited. But yeah, so I'm amped for today. I've got my NWSL shirt on, my Ashlyn Harris Orlando Pride shirt, and so you know me in a good themed shirt. So
I do, and I just want to point out that Wichita State University is right over there, okay. That direction. So I was so excited. That's how I know I live in Wichita, because I was like, woo shock. But we'll talk about that with Werner. Hey, so I was thinking about this. Did I ever tell you about when I got ordained?
No.
Okay, so I'm coming up on the 10-year anniversary of my ordination. I was ordained on April 1st, 2011, right?
That's a good day for you.
I was intentionally ordained on April Fool's Day, and it was a Friday, and it was in Lent, and it was also Rangers opening day, and a whole bunch of clergy showed up, a little day drunk from going to the baseball game and then coming to my ordination, which was perfect. And one of the greatest things I got was the children's minister at the church. Her name was Susan. She figured out how to do drawings, like the kids did drawings, and it was on a certain kind of paper, and she ironed it onto a stole. Ooh. And so these little kids come running up to me to give me the stole, and I have a liturgical airplane, because this one boy was obsessed with B-52 bombers, and he drew one, and it's my favorite thing in the world. I haven't worn it in years and years and years, but stoles really make a difference, and they speak to folk. And I bring this up because I don't think everybody has the opportunity to get a hand-drawn, crayon transferred stole. But if you want a good one, not a good one, a great one, our viewers should check out Jeff Wunrow at Jeff Werner Designs, jeffwunrow.com.
JEFFWUNROW. Jeff Wunrow makes stoles. Here's what I like about Jeff Wunrow and I keep saying this, I am a shorter person. I am 5'2". Stoles for me, so stoles for me generally hit my feet. You know what I mean? I took one of Jamie Plunkett's stoles one time, and it was just it was just so long, and not all stoles are meant for all people, because we are different sized people and different types of people. And Jeff really takes that into consideration. You can say how, what the width of your shoulders are, how tall you are, all of the things, what your colors are, what liturgical season, what ecumenical group or what denomination you belong to, all of it. Jeff does so much to make sure that the stoles that we wear and the liturgical garments that we have in church are meaningful to not only the person that wears them or sees them, but are reflective of who we are as the larger body of Christ. And I'm just really grateful to how he continues to evolve, change with the times, offer new and interesting ideas, and really bring something that is beautiful to wear. I'm an Enneagram 3, as we have talked. I love me some beautiful things.
And I'm an Enneagram 7, which means I'm still trying to collect all of the different origami crane stoles. It's important to note that Jeff Wunrow Designs doesn't just make stoles. They make paraments, they make banners, they make copes, they make chasubles, they make liturgical textiles, and face masks. Get them now, because we may not need them in 4 or 5 years. it's great, and we can't recommend him enough. Jeff Wonroe Designs is our lead sponsor, but we would not promote a company we did not wholeheartedly just enjoy, appreciate, and admire.
We were fans of his before he became fans of ours. And that's a fan
of ours, and
that's a big. We're really grateful. And again, for our viewers, Jeff has a special code just for you. 2-on-1 at checkout gets you 15% off your entire stole order.
That's how we know he likes us. We have the best discount on his entire site. 2-on-1 at checkout, the entire order, not just one.
Entire stole order.
Entire stole order. So I could actually fill up my collection.
Well, you can fill up your collection, or if you know several people graduating from seminary this semester, or if you know people, a couple of people that I know just got their final or just passed their final ordination, so they will be ordained. And so, great thoughts on those gifts as well.
That's a really good point. Well, good. Well, thank you, Jeff Werner Designs, for being our lead sponsor. Spiff, can we talk about Ted Lasso with
Can we please?
Ramirez, please? I'm going to bring him in.
Okay. I'm just so excited.
By the way, that beep, 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 beep is my kid coming in and out of the house.
I don't hear it, so you're okay.
Oh, good. There he is.
Here we go.
Hey, okay, he's sideways.
You're sideways.
I'm sideways. How did that happen? I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
Let's see.
We're just
let's see.
It's kind of like the beliefs.
There we go.
I'll just hold it old school style.
I love it.
That's my favorite entrance of this entire series.
You know what? It's perfect for a conversation on Ted Lasso.
It's perfect. I'm gonna admit, all of a sudden I just heard a voice and it scared the crap out of me. So I'm like because I'm in the waiting room, all of a sudden I just hear Spiff's voice and I'm like, it scared me. It completely scared me.
Come towards the light one.
I
Okay,
am
so
here.
who are you? And what do you do? And why are you here?
Well, my name's Werner Ramirez. I guess formerly Reverend Werner Ramirez. Formerly, not previous. There's language barriers sometimes. But I'm an associate pastor at Fifth Avenue Presbyterian Church in Midtown Manhattan. And I am here because I'm in a cohort with Spiff. And I mentioned a month or two ago that the show Ted Lasso was bringing me life and bringing me joy in the midst of the pandemic. And she sent me a message saying, let's talk Ted Lasso.
Yeah. I extended the invitation to this cohort to, because it's all clergy. So it's like, come on, I'm hoping and Werner was the first person to accept the invitation. And I was like, and generally, as we all know, we let our guests pick the topic, but I suggested this topic to Werner because we both are big fans and we're both soccer people too. So it connects for the two of us very deeply on lots of different levels. So
yeah, for sure.
Very excited to have you. Thanks for coming on. And yeah, Arthur, you watched this week for the first time, correct?
I watched this. I binged it. I every now and again, my body's like, you're going to take a break whether you want to or not. And I just had a couple of sick days where it was it's like cosmic ennui. But it was illness, and I bought an iPad and they're like, you get free Apple TV. I was like, this is the universe lining up. And it was brilliant. Honestly, some of the best television I've ever seen. Yeah.
Werner, what drew you to this show?
Well, so like you said, I'm a huge soccer fan, and I was introduced to Ted Lasso. It has to have been 7 or 8 years ago when the English Premier League, the rights got moved to, I think, NBC and NBC Sportsnet or whatever the channel's called. And they did a promo of Ted Lasso coaching a team that shall remain unnamed. And it was one of the funniest, it was the funniest promo I have ever seen.
So good.
And his character was hilarious. So when the show came out, it took me a while to get Apple TV, but I was expecting that really silly commercial and for it to be extended. And I didn't know how heartwarming it was going to be. I think the best way I can describe Ted Lasso is like a sillier a sillier Friday Night Lights with adults. And I see some connection, some like Ted Lasso is a silly Coach Tay, in some sense. Yeah, and I that wasn't even in my like pre notes of thinking. I just said that right now.
Welcome to 2-on-1. This is how this works.
But I think that's the best way I can describe it for people who haven't seen the show and maybe have seen Friday Night Lights and they're like, well, why do I want to watch this soccer show that's silly? It's like, no, like it's more than soccer. It's relationships, it's character building, and it's some of the best. It's the best TV I saw during the pandemic.
So I have 1,000 questions, and Spiff, actually, tell me about you and Ted Lasso. Excuse me.
I'm a fan of Jason Sudeikis. I'm a big SNL person. Most people know this, and so yeah, just follow him, just what he's doing. And I also had seen the Premier League promo because I too am a big soccer fan, and then people just started talking about it. I've got my finger on the pulse of pop culture most days, and it just started popping up.
You don't.
What?
You've never seen an Indiana Jones movie except for the Crystal Skull. You've seen a Star Wars movie, maybe. You've never seen a James Bond movie, like.
Okay, current pop culture, my friend.
Your pop culture, Jason.
Give me a break. But I was, so it started popping up. It started popping up on Woso Twitter. It started popping up on, and so I was like, okay, like this is something I'll watch. And I would kind of like put it off for no reason other than like, I don't know. I was just kind of like, I was watching other things and people were just like, Spiff, it is like soccer and like family good fun and also some raunchiness, and they're like, it is everything you love. And I was like, okay. And so I started it one night at like 11 p.m. I was like, I'll watch an episode, I'll pick it, if I like it, I'll pick it up. No, binge the entire thing that night, like went to bed at like 3 a.m. The side note of that story is that I watched it all the way through, and I thought it was all the way through because my Apple TV, like generally, it says like, do you want to watch the next episode? And I always just said yes. And then it got to this episode and it felt that there was resolution there. And I was like, oh, beautiful. Loved it. And then I did that a couple times because Ted Lasso became the show that I like put on before bed and just kind of let run out. And then all of a sudden one night it was like, do you want to watch episode 10? And I was like, wait a minute. I thought this thing ended at episode 9. So I had watched Ted Lasso from episode 1 to episode 9 3 full times before I realized that there was an episode 10, and then watched episode 10 and was just blown away by how good it was. And I was like, oh, that's the ending I needed. Okay, I get this. So that's my history with Ted Lasso. That it came out of kind of nowhere, and now it's like kind of all I talk to anybody about when they're looking for a new show or whatever. I'm like, have you seen Ted Lasso? Like in the same way that I did Schitt's Creek like a couple months ago, I was like, have you seen Schitt's Creek? I was like, have you seen Ted Lasso? And now it's all I talk about. So
I'm working on my sister to watch Schitt's Creek, and then I'll ask her to watch Ted Lasso. It's so I have a question to start this off, and Werner, it's you got exactly there. The genre of Ted Lasso isn't easy to pin down, but it's
not at all.
It's almost. So what stood out to me was, what is the name of the owner, the lady owner of
Rebecca.
Rebecca, thank you. I'm sorry to say the lady owner. I didn't want to talk about her awful husband. The trope in sports movies is that the owner, especially when it's the divorced owner's ex-wife, is evil. She's just a horrible bitch, and she's sexualized, and she's irredeemable, and what happens is she gets her comeuppance at the end of the movie. And they don't play that trope. And we can talk about the Brene Brown side of it. What does it mean to subvert genre? For Ted Lasso to subvert genre as its primary way of storytelling? And how does the church subvert? How do we think the church could subvert genre in Lent, in the way we do ministry post-COVID, in how we interact with one another?
That's a really good question.
Is it too much? Should I?
No.
Sorry,
Well, I mean, I think except for maybe her ex-husband, but even there's something there. There isn't a clear villain in Ted Lasso. There like everybody is messed up, everybody is broken, but you're not rooting for any of them to fail. You're
I'm just excited. I try so hard not to interrupt. Excuse me. Please keep going.
Yeah, so you're not rooting for any of them to fail. Like maybe you do at one point, but then you see a part of their story. So for instance, with Jamie, like you really hate him at first, but then you hear his story, you hear about his relationship with his father, and you don't want him to fail. And to answer your question of like subverting genre within the church, like I think how often in the church, like we root for our enemy to fail. Like whether it's the conservative church, whether it's the progressive church, whether it's the moderate church, like we want our enemies to fail. And
sorry.
And that's all good. And how amazing would it be to wanting to know the stories of all our congregant members, wanting to know the stories of our neighbors within our church building, wanting to know the stories of people, and seeing them for who they are, and seeing the redeemable. You want these characters to be redeemed, and I don't know, that's something that you don't often see in television, and you don't often see in the church. So I was really grateful that Ted Lasso did that for me. It was a gut check. Are
you telling me that song is full of people who are like human beings who are capable of great and deep good, and they're not all just right-offable? Frustrating.
Yeah, yes, it's so frustrating to like yes, I honestly do believe that. And it's so much easier for me to want to see the villain. And yes, that we still call out theologies that I don't know if call out is even the right. We subvert wrong theologies. We subvert that make others not see somebody in the image of God. But yes, like I have to think that people are redeemable. And the show Ted Lasso just reminded me of that, and it was brilliant.
Oh, good. Well, because no one is fixed. Like what's really beautiful about it is that like even in our worst moments, even in the characters that you're like, oh God, that character is just awful. They don't stay awful forever. There is not a single character in which I think your relationship to that character doesn't also grow and change and shift. Even the very best of characters that you're like, even as you come in and you think of Keely, who comes in as just kind of like meant to be the kind of like tart of the group or whatever, and she brings depth and character and really listens to these guys and like has relationships with all of them, and is and really is subverting the norm of what it means to be that kind of that girlfriend trope, or just even a woman in that male sphere. And so I think for the church writ large, I think to not fix people in who they are at one time, maybe their worst time, because a lot of what church does is attract people in their very darkest spaces,
and then we tell them to look their best and pretend to be their best even when they're broken as hell.
Yeah, we don't love that brokenness. We try and do the quick fix. We don't offer an entire season. We offer a single episode for these people to fix. And what Ted Lasso does is say, okay, we're going to give you Jamie Tart, do. And by the end, you still may not love him. He's not going to be your favorite character, but you're going to appreciate, I mean, he might be, but there's going to be a new form of appreciation for who he is. And even, I would say, Ted, who comes off a little simple sometimes, right? And a little too eager. has the moment that I think all three of us will agree is one of the best moments of television history, is that Dart moment where he comes for him. He comes for, I forget Rebecca's husband's name, but like
Mr. Panty Grabber. I don't know.
but it doesn't matter what his name is, but like he comes for him in a way that like shows him up and puts him in his place of humility, and like offers a posture of saying like, this is not how we treat each other. And I'm going to right size this and I'm going to rectify this in a way that I have control over, which is to not tell you how good I am at darts.
Rupert,
thank you. It is Rupert.
So
yeah.
Or oh man, and now that I looked up his name, I forgot the other guy's name. The little henchman.
Nathan?
No, the Rebecca's henchman.
I think it's Higgins.
Okay. Werner, I want to ask you a question about this because I kind of know it was Spiff, and I want to make sure that I hear it from you as well. With Higgins, when Rebecca's like, she drops it in like episode 2, she's like, you were tasked with taking me out to lunch so my husband could hide the affairs he was having. And then like episode 6, she says, you were supposed to be my friend and you did this. So the writer's room used Brene Brown and really dealt with like authentic, transparent, vulnerable communication. What can we learn from Ted Lasso in teaching our people how to talk to one another and really to themselves? And can we Brene Brown our prayer lives?
Can we Brene Brown our prayer lives? Yeah, So one of the best things I've learned that I learned in couples therapy was like stating your wants, stating your needs. Like it doesn't mean you get what you want, but like at least it's out in the open. And it brings out authentic communication. And so I'm going to answer your second question first.
Please.
Yeah, I think we can do that in prayer. Like stating like God, this is what I want, and this is what I feel like I need. Like I don't know if that means it's gonna happen or if it's what you want to happen, but like I'm like at the very best, like I think being, especially in private prayer, being your authentic self, knowing that like that God knows your shit. And there's like sometimes you want to hide from it, but like there really isn't any point to. I think we can be that authentic, vulnerable in our prayer, because we know that God is a good God that is compassionate, that does not treat us the way that our sins ought to. And
you're a very good Presbyterian.
Yeah, I'm pretty but I trust in that, and besides a few other people, like I don't know anybody else that I can be that authentic with, and if it's gonna be something, I want it to be the divine that I can be my most authentic self with.
Yeah. Ted Lasso, I really appreciate just the transparency and the thoughtfulness around healthy communication, and that it's just like, I don't know, they talk about what they want, they talk about like how it made them feel. There's a lot of I feel like sort of language that happens, and there's a lot of ownership and accountability to it, which I think is a really beautiful thing that we don't see modeled well. And I know that they've talked about that this is actually something that is intentional about the show, is healthy adult relationships in conversation with each other, but like there's just there's a couple like times between like Keely and Roy, and it's kind of how they're getting set up to arc in there. And again, y'all know this is a spoiler show and it's been out, so but like
I've never seen Ted Lasso. Stop watching this. Go watch Ted Lasso. There
you go. It's okay. We do whatever they want. Yeah. But they're when she goes to bid on him and uses that kind of in the scene where, and Roy comes up and is like, don't put me into the middle of this. And she goes, I'm sorry. And he goes, okay. And it's very,
with
what?
Nate. When Ted Lasso gets drunk and Nate's shoving his plays under the door and Ted Lasso yells at him drunk, and then the next day he's like, I was awful, I'm really sorry, and Nate's like, okay.
Yeah,
And,
there's a lot of
it wasn't a 3-episode arc in which they have to rediscover that they're friends for real. They're just humans who are I'm sorry, I jumped in there, but like,
yeah, just what that means to really be I don't know, like authentically yourself in relationship to others, and what, I don't know, I think a lot of what we do in church is forgiveness, and is forgiveness possible in that kind of conversation, and this makes it really simple. We very much talk, there's a lot that we complicate about forgiveness that doesn't need to be complicated. And Ted Lasso models that really beautifully in a way that's just like, even in really unkind and really hurtful things that they do to one another, that like authentic apology means something, and that forgiveness and moving forward doesn't have to be this long drawn out thing. It can be, but there's acknowledgement of the hurt, but like that they move on in ways that seem to be helpful and productive. It's just I think the church can really learn something from that, in saying like, we've done some real hurt, we've own your shit, move forward, ask forgiveness, move forward, but also don't do it again, because we don't see the same issues. You see Jamie's selfishness over and over, but that's a longer arc of how he's being redeemed. But like the personal hurts don't continue to happen. And I think that that's part of where Ted Lasso doesn't fix a single character in their worst traits or their best traits.
Well, one of the things that I'm really, I guess in some sense, jealous of Ted Lasso, I love Ted Lasso's pastoral care. And later I want to talk a little bit about the pastor as a person, and Ted Lasso being like an actual human being too. Well, an actual fictional human being. But one of the things that he has that I wish I was better at is recognizing what the real problem is. And so for instance, in I think it was either episode 8 or 9, when Rebecca finally tells him, like, I've been rooting for you to fail, and I've been sabotaging you every step of the way. I am so sorry. And his response is, divorce is hard.
It's so good.
It's like, you like and now I'm paraphrasing, like, I forgive you, divorce is hard. And he's able to recognize the root of the problem, and then able to see Rebecca like as somebody who's hurting, and he's able to forgive her because he sees that humanness in her, and it's Ted Lasso as pastoral care. I'm all on board for Ted Lasso to be my pastor.
He's such a pastor.
Have y'all ever read Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg? I'm going to guess they used nonviolent communication in the writer's room, because there's a lot of this, and it's basically communicating without agenda and communicating without attack. And yeah, that you guys both love the dart scene, and it's my second favorite. It is I tried to sabotage you, I actively sought to ruin you, I forgive you, divorce is hard. Because here's my question. The narratives we want to change, is there any other way to change trajectory except through forgiveness? Not cheap grace, forgiveness.
Good question. No, I think that's the way to change it. Because grace isn't cheap, right? Like there is weight to it, and there is weight to the vulnerability of owning your own stuff, and asking for forgiveness, and knowing that forgiveness is outside of your control, that only comes through the interpersonal relationship that you can build or that you have to build to make amends, to change that trajectory. in my opinion, I guess.
And Rebecca didn't want cheap grace.
No. And she didn't expect any grace.
Right.
Which is the only way grace can happen, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah. But here's the Presbyterian in me coming out too a little bit. I don't. Her confession was real. Mm-hmm. Like her confession was full on real, and she said everything, and was. And she was able to she was able to confess her sins in that authentic, almost in a prayer-like fashion.
Without defense, reliant on mercy and nothing but mercy.
Right. And she got mercy. I mean, it was. You're right. That might be the best scene in the show. It's so beautiful. Like you have tears in your eye, and then 2 seconds later you're laughing about a joke that Ted Lasso does. It's really well done.
Well, I think that there's. Oh, go ahead.
I just want to note, by the way, Werner, I was raised Presbyterian. I was baptized in the Presbyterian church right before I moved to Fort Worth to go to divinity school. I accidentally became a disciple. And I'm one of those disciples who's like, no Christmas music in Advent. We are doing a prayer of confession and words of assurance in Lent. We are like, I'm liturgically frozen chosen 100% of the way. Mostly. I don't wear robes. But I do wear stoles from jeffwonroe.com. Check him out today for
well done.
Check him out. Done. Great, but
well, I know it's perfect. I don't know where were we going from there?
I'm sorry. It's the balance of sincerity and joy.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much. I mean, and this is why it works for me, is because even in that space of his forgiveness of Rebecca or Ted's, there's a consistency to who his ethic of curiosity is how he gets there, is how he understands that she is hurting from a divorce, like that he is curious as to why she is treating him that way, allows him to be open, at least in my interpretation and understanding of how he's kind of going through this, allows him to be open enough to offer that forgiveness, because there is movement forward, because he has gotten to the root of what is happening. The curiosity for me, why that dart scene is so powerful, is not because he one-ups Rupert, but is because you finally understand his like hermeneutical lens of life, with curiosity, and that it is why he comes, why the parallel of football to football, right? Why is he curious about coaching a sport in which he still doesn't understand offsides? That there is curiosity to these people. But I have a question, if I can move us in a different direction for a second. And now it just went out of my head. Oh, goodness.
May I ask one in the interim?
Please.
So you talk about an ethic of curiosity, and I kind of love that. And curiosity is just one of those weird, outstanding characteristics, right? What I would just like to know personally, like what you think your ethic is in engaging the world, what it actually is and what it aspires to be, and how that plays into your hermeneutic or your primary hermeneutic.
Yeah, I honestly, Swift, you did a sermon right there. The hermeneutic of curiosity of, again, for Lasso was like, why is she doing this to me? And I bet you there's a bigger story behind that's what we need to attend to. I think, how we all have we have one sermon, like we could say we essentially have one sermon. My sermon is, you are loved, and through the grace of God you are enough. And I think that sermon is rooted in the doctrine that we are created in the image of God. And for me, that hermeneutic, especially with curiosity, is what is the humanness that's happening here that needs to be attended to. And even with the dart scene, I didn't have the language of it being curiosity, even with the scene with Rebecca and Spiff. You absolutely nailed that. Like that's like I'm an internal processor, so like that is so in my brain. Like that I like that hermeneutic of curiosity. That's brilliant.
May I ask, by the way, because inevitably you're clergy under 40, what's your Enneagram number?
I'm a 2 wing 3. Pretty standard 2 wing 3.
Pretty standard. I love it.
Yeah.
I was guessing somewhere in that oeuvre. Spiff, hermeneutics, ethics?
I like to, yeah. I like to think that I operate on an hermeneutic of curiosity. I just hadn't before. I would name the before Ted Lasso. I wouldn't have named it as such. But since then, I have. I've been toiling that phrase around for a bit since watching Ted Lasso. Thanks. Because even for me, who came into the church much later in life, I was curious about what it meant. For me, it's my curiosity is also rooted in truth. I need my end goal is truth, and so sometimes that curiosity is waylaid by facts and or by what I think I know, and so that's how I, how do I get out of my own way to continue to be curious enough to find the root of truth, is really where I enter into most texts, is where I try and write and speak from and engage in new relationship and or promote the growth of established relationships from.
Like it.
Arthur?
Oh, I'm trying to live into a hermeneutic of play. Every time Keeley was like, I'm so serious and I play a game for a living, I'm like, that's what I want to do with the church. I'm an animated bit of carbon who somehow has sentience. I'm so serious. Look at me, business till I die. I don't know. I'm a 7.
I like it. I think that's me.
I mean, that sounded exactly like a 7. Yeah, there was no shock there whatsoever.
No. Well, and here's my question. I remembered it as we were talking about all of this, which plays right into me being a 3, my friends. Is that what does who actually wins in Ted Lasso? So there's the entire understanding of it is a sports team. You can't see them, but these are framed photos of my beloved San Francisco Giants winning the World Series. I am wearing a team in who I support. I love a good competition. I love sports. And so it bothered me at first. And I was, I wonder what was Ted's thing, because Ted's like, I'll say it again for you. I don't care if we win or lose. I want these people to be their best selves. And for me, that is the posture of the church that I hope we take. But what we end up taking is Coach Beard saying, that's enough. We need to win. And, we can ask our people all the time, how do you, we don't need to win souls. It's not anything like that. We need to figure out what it means to be our best selves. And so I'm just curious for y'all, what does that understanding of winning? Because I would suggest that Ted still thinks of himself as a winner at the end of the season, even though they have some wins and losses in there. And even though they get relegated, right? But I still, in Ted's version of winning, or of what winning looks like, they won. There's definite, Jamie passing that ball is the ultimate, taking that extra pass is the ultimate framing for Ted of winning, is that he taught Jamie how to, expand the game into someone else. So I guess my question again, is it okay to want to win? And what does winning actually look like for each of you and or the church?
Yeah, I think it's okay to want to win. I mean, like, again, as a even though my teams right now suck. I'm an Arsenal and a Galaxy fan, and they're not doing great. But I am a Laker fan, and right. that's looking up. But I think for Ted Lasso, it's about the journey, and it's about trying to not just survive, but to thrive as well. And that necessarily doesn't mean like wins or losses. But one of the things that I really loved about the ending of the show, when they like a painful relegation, he laments with them in the loss. Like we have, like us in the church, like we have losses. Like sometimes ministries fail. Sometimes churches close down because of finances, or sometimes things go wrong, and we lose. And the Reverend Ted Lasso.
Follow him on Twitter. There's a Rev Ted Lasso. Okay, we'll talk after. There is a Rev Ted Lasso on Twitter, so keep going.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
It's CJ Burke, but yeah.
Okay. But he's in it. He's in the loss with them. And as we see in the very first episode, he is dancing and celebrating in the wins. And he, so I think as the Big C church, we need to be with not only our congregants, but with like our neighbors, with the nation, with the world, when there are losses, like lament with the losses and celebrate the wins. But know that that's not the end. Like there's still more to do. There's still more to go. And helping people on the journey to not merely survive, but to thrive as well.
So there's this story about when Ireland and Germany played, and Ireland started a cheer that was "Stand Up If You Hate England," and the Germans joined in, and sooner than later, the entire stadium is standing up, cheering "Stand Up If You Hate England" during this game, which I think about Ted getting called a wanker a lot, and it went from like an insult to just that's what they call him. By the way, side note, the definition of wanker that Ted gave his kid is one of, what is it? Someone who likes to be alone with his thoughts. There were like 4 throwaway lines. Why Rebecca's favorite and first concert was the Spice Girls, we never got to find out, and it's incredible, and I want to know that story. Anyways, I'm getting ahead of myself. Ted Lasso is building community. He's not trying to win sports games. That comes out of it.
Yeah.
That ties right into what you're saying, Werner. And it's the I'm going to go disciple-y because we've been a little Presbyterian.
Go for it.
It's every day bringing cookies that he has made in a little pink box, and he is feeding Rebecca. And she both loves it and hates it, and she would rather take care of it herself, and he won't let her. And she tries to take care of it herself, and she can't because it is the act of giving in and of itself. And that's I think the subversion of win-winning. Perhaps win-winning comes from that radical feeding of community, and it has to. And I think it ties into what you were saying, Werner, about the best self and people being able to, in both their wins and their losses, be full, if that makes sense. I hope I'm not like, I think I'm looking through the window you just shined up. Forgive me if I've crashed through it instead.
No, I think that's great. Yeah. And in a sense, like Ted Lasso is he's not changing anything about anyone. He's highlighting these attributes, these gifts from God, in these people, and highlighting it and making it and reminding them that part of them is accessible, and that it's there for them to use. And you're right, he's building community. Like the he's building community with the restaurant owners, with kids playing soccer or football in the streets. He's building community with the whole town. And it's exactly what you said.
The Ethiopian restaurant was that's my number 3 favorite scene. I want it the way.
I think it's Indian, isn't it? It's because he's like, yeah.
I want it the way you made it. I want to eat what you eat, and I'm gonna suffer.
Well, and the curiosity there of when the reporter, which his name should not escape me because
Independent.
Yeah, it's the Independent, but anyways, but he says, "Oh, I can't imagine you have a lot of Indian food, in Kansas." And he's like, "I don't know, never tried it." And it's just, and I'm like, the type of curiosity or the posture of curiosity that you have to have, it just so deep rooted in you to do that type of global communal building. That is what he's really doing, because he's taking his very mid-America kind of roots and bringing them into this space and saying, like, this is who I am, who are you? Mm-hmm. and that is it's not let me try to be like you, but it's just who are you? Let me experience things in that same way. One of the great throwaway lines that I love is when he gives the little army man to the player who's just like, I'm gonna give, and it's like the sentiment is there and we're with him on that, and then he gives it back and it's like, I don't have the same affinity for American military that you do. And it's like, and then Ted's like, yeah, you're right, and then goes on, and it doesn't have to be a thing, but that is what it means to hold. That's the kingdom for me, and that's the work of the kingdom, because it's letting the experiences that we carry with us, who we are, be whole and valuable to what it means to be a part of the larger group. It's also why I would push back on the goldfish analogy that runs through the entire thing. And I'm curious about how y'all feel about the goldfish analogy, because for one, I don't think we should forget the past. I think it's a part of how it informs who we are. But I also understand that we don't need to carry it at the forefront of our minds for everything that we do.
I'm a reframer, and there's a difference between reframing, cutting it out of the picture, and reframing it, keeping the scraps.
Yep.
And I think the way you said that is beautiful, Spiff.
Real quick, this is something that I did want to touch on at some point, because I think this might be helpful for clergy that are listening, or for congregant, or if you happen to go to church or have a pastor or know a pastor in your life. You see Ted Lasso as a pastor, but as a person. And he goes through some real tough things. He's going through a divorce. And I think often clergy forget that other clergy are people as well. And congregates sometimes forget that clergy are people. And there's stuff that happens in our lives. I mean, we just went through a freaking pandemic. And the mental mind games that the pandemic did for many clergy was real. And one of the things that I loved about the show is that he sought out community to help him in his toughest times. I had a professor of mine in undergrad once say, like, if you're in ministry, like you at least need three friends, like somebody that you vent about ministry with, somebody that like you can network and like talk about, like, what do you do? Who do you get your stools from? And somebody who you talk no ministry with whatsoever. And this pandemic's been really tough. Like, and for us in New York City and the East Coast and places where it gets cold, like the wind, like the coldness and not being able to go outside, like, was really, really hard. And I think this invitation from Spiff was part of me, like, admitting that to like our cohort, like, hey, like the winter's been really, really hard. And being able to find, it's so important for for pastors, for clergy to have a community to be the person with. And I wanted to mention that part because that part was something that hit really real for me as I watched the show.
Well,
go ahead.
Please.
I thank you for naming that because I didn't cry. I'm a crier. We all know this about me. The viewers know this about me. I don't know if you all know. I cry if I'm too happy. I cry if I'm too sad. You got to find me a real nice middle. I teared up in that it's like first episode when he goes home and he just like empties his stuff and like just takes a shower and like he's alone. Yeah. And as someone who it just hit me in a real way during this pandemic. So last 2 Thursdays ago, I don't know time, March 11th started my year 2 of this pandemic life. And from March 11th, 2020 until March 10th, 2021, I left my house 23 times. That is not a lot of times. And I live alone and it's me and so I felt very deeply and my church is my team, right? Like and I'm an extrovert like Ted. We have similar energies often of just like we show up in places with the big energy, and then we come home to extreme loneliness. And I just felt that really deeply, and it's just been heightened during this time of COVID. Because I don't have my people to go to. I don't have my friends to go to. Werner and I used to see each other once a month at least, and I haven't seen you in a year. And while this communicative space is wonderful and opens up a lot of new spaces of connection, as 2-on-1 has seen and built over the last, almost year that we've been doing this, it's still sometimes not the same, like I've had one hug in the last year. Like that's a really sad statement, but it's a really true one. Mm-hmm. And I feel like if we look at Ted in those spaces of loneliness and say, okay, lock him in there. That's what a lot of pastors are dealing with right now because we're cut off from our teams.
And by the way, excuse me.
No, it's just like, this for clergy, especially, this is a calling. It's not just we have signed up and it's not, we didn't find this job on Monster or whatever those job apps, like things like that. God called us to this space. And God called us to these people in the same way that, I'm sure Ted did his own discernment and with Beard that says, let's go to this place and do this thing. And then, what is a coach without his team? What is a pastor without their people? And that's just felt really real this year.
And a word for clergy, because our audience is, I wouldn't say primarily clergy, but solidly. You probably haven't taken time off in the last calendar year that you were supposed to and you need to. Your church will survive without you for a few days or a few weeks as necessary. Your church will understand if you say, I've done everything to hold up my optimistic, hopeful end of things, and I'm about to lose my shit and scream. They might even let you lose your shit and scream in their presence. Who knows? But they are, like, just as there's no villains in Ted Lasso, perhaps there are no villains in the church, even if we prefer there are, because it's much easier to say there's a black and white world where Manchester United is evil and whatever the name of their team is good, or the Arsenal or anything else. I mean, God hates the Yankees, but that's baseball.
Yeah, I mean, if we look, do we get to look at our church as the Diamond Dogs?
I was just you beat me to it.
Oh, sorry.
I just want to point out something, by the way. Speaking of relegation, the Wichita Wind Surge, which is the stupidest name for a minor league baseball team in the history of stupid names, was a AAA team, and because of the pandemic, got relegated to AA. And so, like, we're feeling. Wow. Also, we have Indian food restaurants, plural, in Wichita. It's a city of like 500,000 people. Like, we're not. It's not. I'm not going to say it's not podunk, but it's not as podunk. We are coming up to the close of our time together, and I want to be aware of it and respect it. Spiff, you are so much better at asking the final question than I. Would you please do so?
I would, but hold on. Werner, did you have one more final question? Did you have another question that you were going to? Okay, I just thought you would. Okay. Absolutely. Werner, thank you so much for this time. It has been incredible and fun. And I hope you will come back and I don't know what we'll talk, but we'll talk something.
We should talk.
Maybe Friday Night Lights.
I was just gonna say, but you named something earlier that I was like, we should talk that. Friday Night Lights, absolutely. But yeah, thank you so much. So as is our final question, what biblical character, theme, story, verse are you most reminded of in Ted Lasso?
Well, be conscious of time. I'll be quick. At the church I work at right now, I work with a handful of people, but I work with the youth, and I love working with the youth. And we are doing a series on the fruits of the Spirit and how they intersect with justice. And the theme that I see most in Ted Lasso is the fruits of the Spirit. You see love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, generosity, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. I do not have that memorized. It's right there. Shout out to my intern Brooke, who's done Bible quiz, so she knew all those off the top of her head. I did not, but I see the fruits of the. So, and quick shout out to one of my diamond dogs from the church, Matt, who hooked it up with this AFC Richmond jersey.
I'm so jealous. I want it. So yeah, show it off. Take it. Can you go
and
back?
Then I got the lasso here somewhere.
Yeah.
Does that work?
No, you can see it, but we can send. Oh, you sent me a picture. I'll post a picture online.
There you go.
That's awesome. I'm gonna shout out to my girl Ashlyn Harris, who's just love her, and the Orlando Pride, who are come on Pride, we can do it this year.
Name my congratulations to Wichita State basketball, which made it into the NCAA March Madness tournament this year.
Look at us.
I love
sports. You know sports. But where I'm going to go with our final question, which is someone that I haven't done before. I'm going to go with Keely as Mary Magdalene, as one of the girls. As the girl amongst the men who listens, who knows the stories, who gets maligned for who she is, how she looks, maybe just her personhood as a woman, but who does some real work of community building against those disciples that are in there with them, doesn't get the credit, doesn't get the shine, but very much is a part of what makes that team solid and lifts it to its best self.
I love it.
This is going to make my answer super weird, and that's okay.
Do it.
I don't think Jesus had an Enneagram number, and I come back to that, and there's a reason I bring this up. I think he was the fullness of humanity. It's personality versus essence. I've been thinking about what you said, Spiff, of like Ted Lasso is he's as best he can. He's not perfect at it, but he's fully realized. He knows who he is. Who are you, right? I'm going to suggest that Ted Lasso is a Christological statement, but it is inhabiting Christ as a 3. Because I think Christ inhabits all of the numbers, right? Has to.
Sure.
And I promise you that 2s read Jesus as a 2, and 7s definitely read Jesus as a 7. Dude was always eating. He was always being snarky. He was telling stories nobody wanted to listen to. He was a 7.
But he won. He won that death battle.
And we can talk about all of that. And there's again, we could probably really have a weird that's what we should. Anyways, so I'm going to go with Ted Lasso as Jesus the 3.
Jesus, that's awesome too.
That's awesome. I'm here for it. I love it. Well, Werner, thank you so much. This has been just everything I could have hoped for. We could have gone on so much longer. We are sponsored by Jeff One Row Designs, celebrating 15, possibly 16 years of making ordinary time extraordinary. Make sure to use the code 2on1, all one word, at checkout for 15% off your entire stole order. Arthur, we've switched we've switched our outros. You want to tell us who's coming up next week?
I do. The Dr. Sarah Maurice Brubaker, one of my favorite ethicists, and she is on faculty at Phillips Theological Seminary. She's coming on to talk about one of the best movies ever made, Waiting for Guffman. And I've been waiting to do a Christopher Guest movie. She is a huge nerd about it. I'm probably a big nerd about it. And Spiff, now you know how I feel when we talk about soccer. But it's going to be something else. And April is in the works at this point. However, again, I'll say it. Jesus was kind of the boy who lived.
Hint, hint.
It's pronounced two on one, not to un one. Jesus
And
says,
we're out.